If you're in the market for a super shoe, you have probably looked at the Saucony Endorphin Elite and the Nike Vaporfly 3. In this video, we're going to be talking about both these shoes. Hopefully I'll be able to help you come to a decision on which one will work best for you. Let's get into it. Let's start off with those disclosures. Both of these shoes were sent to me for the purpose of review by Roadrunner Sports. However, no one is going to get a chance to see this video before you do here on YouTube. And with that, of course, I will be placing links to both of these shoes that you can buy at Roadrunner Sports in the show notes below. The Nike Vaporfly 3 will cost you $250. The Saucony Endorphin Elite will cost you $275. Now, yes, there is a bit of a premium for the Endorphin Elite. However, when you're already getting up to paying $250, I don't know how much $25 extra actually means. I get it, it's hard to wrap your head around paying $275 for a pair of shoes, but when it comes down to it, isn't it always also hard to pay $250 for a shoe? The answer is yes. $250 is certainly not cheap. $275 is even less so, but not by much. The Nike Vaporfly 3 has a stack of 40 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. The Saucony Endorphin Elite has a stack of 39.5 in the heel, 31.5 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop also. Let's talk weight. In a US men's size 9, the Nike Vaporfly 3 weighs in at 6.5 ounces or 184 grams. In my size, a US men's size 13, the Vaporfly 3 tips the scale at 8.3 ounces or 235 grams. The Saucony Endorphin Elite in a US men's size 9 tips the scale at 7.2 ounces or 204 grams. So it's a little heavier than the Vaporfly 3. In fact, it's 10.9% heavier. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, the Endorphin Elite tips the scale at 8.8 ounces or 250 grams. Again, slightly heavier than the Vaporfly 3. However, when we get up to my size, the Endorphin Elite is only 6.38% heavier than the Vaporfly 3. Is it noticeable when it's on your feet? I don't know. I guess I can feel the difference. The Vaporfly does just feel extremely light. If I didn't have the Vaporfly 3 in my left hand, I would say that the Endorphin Elite is just incredibly light, but I can feel a difference. Oh, I should also point out that I did run the 2023 Boston Marathon in the Saucony Endorphin Elite, and it performed beautifully. And while I haven't run a marathon in the Vaporfly 3, I have run a lot of marathons in the Next Percent 2, so I kind of know how it feels on a long race. All right, let's get into what makes these shoes. Let's start with the Vaporfly 3, and we're going to start at the top. We're going to work our way down. We have a very thin heel collar, and then just slightly inside the heel collar, there is a bolster that comes all the way around. When you put your foot into the Vaporfly 3, it does feel pretty good around your heel, but that's not the end of the story, so hold on. The heel counter on the Vaporfly 3 is actually fairly rigid. In fact, it's very rigid. I can barely push that down. And usually I would say that a solid heel counter is going to prevent a lot of heel slip. So clearly that is what Nike was intending by having this rigid heel counter in here. The Vaporfly 3 is using their fly knit upper, which is, it's like there's nothing there. This is the most minimal upper that I have seen. And as far as overlays, well, there really are none. We have a little piece covering the tape on the back. We've got some overlays right along the eyelet chain just to give that little support. But where you would normally see overlays, so right along the top of the midsole, maybe around the front, on the lateral inside area here, we usually have some overlays just to give the upper a little structure. What Nike has done with the fly knit is that they've just changed the weave in certain areas in order to give the upper that structure. I'm not sure how much you can see it, but right here it gets a pretty tight weave, and again around the toe, that just helps keep the fly knit upper off your foot. Just like previous versions of this shoe, the laces are off center. Now that is so it takes pressure off the top of your foot. The tongue is just super thin. I mean, ridiculously thin. There is no gusset, but there is a lace loop in the front. And the only issue that I have with this tongue is that if you're too haphazard in putting the shoe on, sometimes the inside of the tongue kind of folds underneath. But really, that's a ridiculous thing to complain about, because all it takes is an extra couple of seconds in order to make sure the tongue is positioned nicely. And then I didn't have any issue with the lockdown across the midfoot. I felt like there was plenty of room in my toe box. Now, I have to say that I do have fairly narrow feet, and generally speaking, these shoes do run a little narrow. But at least for my foot, I felt like I had plenty of room in my toe box. Let's come down to the midsole. Now, this is what made Nike the leader in super shoes. Obviously, they were the OG. They're the original. And it's the Zoom X foam. And we've got a lot of Zoom X foam. We actually have 2mm more Zoom X foam in the 3 over the 2. And then sandwiched in between the Zoom X foam is the carbon fiber fly plate. If we come down to the outsole of the Vaporfly 3, we can see we got a lot of rubber on the front. Strategic rubber right here on the heel. Of course, it's very difficult to see the heel rubber because it's the same color as the midsole. And one thing that Nike has changed over the previous version is that they have made this rubber a little thinner up on the front, and that is obviously going to save weight. It's also going to allow them to put more Zoom X foam in. Okay, that's the Vaporfly 3. let's talk about the Endorphin Elite. And now that I have just picked up this shoe, it is fair to say that these shoes are night and day different from each other. If these are the two shoes that you are thinking about buying, you really do have a decision to make because they look different, they feel different, not just on your foot, but also on your run. But we'll get to the ride in just a second. Let's talk about the materials used in the Endorphin Elite. Look at this. Look at this heel collar. There is nothing there. It's almost like a very firm sock. You kind of put your foot in and it's like a knit material right here in the back. So there is really no padding to speak of. And you might think, well, Matt, I need some padding. I want some padding between my foot and the shoe. But honestly, I really didn't notice anything when I put my foot in this shoe and I did my workouts and then I took this out to the Boston Marathon. It felt good the whole time. I think this next part's going to surprise you too. If we look at the heel counter, we can see that there is no heel counter. Look at this. This is just their knit upper and it is very soft and it's very pliable and there's really nothing there. But what we do have is this little heel strap that comes around the back and it kind of holds your foot right in place. And when this heel collar is pushed up against this heel strap, it works just the same as a heel counter and it works incredibly well. I didn't have any heel slip in the Endorphin Elite. Oh, I should say there is just a little bit of padding right here on the back just to increase that comfort just a little bit. Now the upper is totally different from the Nike Vaporfly 3. Where Nike used their fly knit upper, Saucony is using pretty much a blend of everything they could find. We have knit in the back, we have a mesh in the front, we've got this extra kind of mesh band that comes around the midfoot and then it goes on the outside of the carbon fiber plate on the bottom. Where Nike chose to not use overlays for the Vaporfly 3, Saucony has gone the complete other route and they've decided to put overlays all over the shoe. Obviously we've got their big TV logo coming down over the toe, right around the toes. There's a pretty prominent overlay, or it's actually an underlay because I can feel the mesh over it. That just again keeps the mesh off the top of your foot. We've got this band that comes over, we've got the overlays coming along the eyelet chain, but it also drops down just a little bit and then comes all the way around the back into the heel strap, which then comes around the other side and feeds back into the overlay system. Look, I'm kind of saying this in jest because there are a lot of overlays. It seems like there's a lot going on with this shoe when you look at it, but everything seems to work together surprisingly well. Now let's come down to the outsole because just like the Vaporfly 3, the magic really happens in the Endorphin Elite's midsole. Saucony is using a brand new midsole for this shoe. It's the Power Run HG. And look, I can't personally back this up, but Saucony says that it provides 95% energy return. That's huge. And then sandwiched in between this Power Run HG, this hugely responsive foam, we do have a slotted carbon fiber plate. And the slotted carbon fiber plate is just designed so it works for more runners. So depending on where you hit the ground and you toe off, maybe you toe off more to the lateral side, maybe more to the medial side, you are still going to be getting the same benefit from the carbon fiber plate because it's slotted. We come down to the outsole. You can see Saucony is using a very similar tactic. We have a lot of rubber right here on the front. Obviously this is a race day shoe. Generally when we're racing we tend to hit more midfoot to forefoot. That naturally happens when we pick up the pace. And then we have a little strip of rubber right here on the back. Although unlike the Nike Vaporfly 3, we have no rubber on the medial side of the heel. And that is probably a good choice for Saucony to make just to save a very little bit of weight, because generally speaking, when we land, we're going to land with our lateral outside heel and then roll through before we toe off. And for me, that is exactly how I hit the ground. In fact, the rubber looks, I don't know, it looks pretty good. I can see that I've worn away the kind of wood grain that they've put into the rubber, but then I am wearing down the Power Run HG just on the outside edge here. But that's all right. These shoes are made to be worn. Okay, I think this is the part that everyone wants to know because, you know, yeah, these shoes are made by different companies, they're made using different materials, but how do these shoes feel on my foot? Now, when I said that these two shoes are night and day different, I wasn't joking. The Nike Vaporfly 3, when you put your foot into this shoe, let's say you're just walking around the house, it's going to feel marshmallow soft. I mean, if you haven't run in the Vaporfly 3 before, I think when you first put this on your foot, it's going to be surprising how soft it feels. However, that soft feeling is also very responsive. And when you get that carbon fiber plate in the middle, it almost gives you a contradictory feeling. Like, how can something be so soft and yet still spring back and be so responsive? And I think this combination, this recipe of this super soft ZoomX foam and the carbon fiber plate sandwiched in between, I think that has been the winning recipe for Nike over the last 6 years since they released the 4%, because that combination just feels good. Now, this shoe is a long distance racer. It's going to make your feet feel good late in the race because it is so soft. On the other hand, some people don't like super soft shoes. Some people like a little more road feel, maybe it's something a little more even, dare I say, responsive, and that's where the Endorphin Elite comes in. Now, the Endorphin Elite is not super marshmallow soft like the Vaporfly 3, far from it. In fact, if you run in the Vaporfly 3 and then you immediately run in the Endorphin Elite, you're going to say that this shoe rides firm. However, it does not ride firm. I would not want to describe this shoe as riding firm at all. It definitely rides firmer than the Vaporfly 3, but it's not a firm ride. Firm ride is something that you just can't sustain for a long time. And the Endorphin Elite, I would was able to run a marathon. I think I ran that marathon in 3 hours and 15 minutes. And from the start to the finish, my feet felt good. My feet never felt like they were getting tired. Of course, the rest of me was getting tired. That's normal when you run a marathon. But the shoes worked incredibly well. And it's almost like, and I've had this same feeling running in the Vaporfly too, that when I get tired during the later courses of a race, I can almost rely on the shoes. If I focus a little more on my foot strike, I kind of put the energy into the shoes, that the shoes are actually helping me move forward. That's how I felt in my last marathon wearing the Endorphin Elite. Now, my experience with these two shoes, it's not scientific. It's not a scientific comparison. These are just my thoughts. And I have to say that even though I ran a very successful marathon in the Endorphin Elite, in my mind, when I think about what I like, I still like the feel of the Vaporfly 3, but only because it's softer, and I do like that plush feel. I like it in my daily trainers, and when I get that softness and it can be as responsive as the Vaporfly 3, I think it's a win. It's something that I would lean towards if I didn't actually have experience in anything else. However, I've got to say that the on-foot experience of both of these shoes is that the Endorphin Elite just feels a little quicker, and I think it is because it's a slightly firmer foam than the Vaporfly 3, so it's almost like I'm feeling the ground. It's almost like I can feel the work that I'm putting into the shoe of the Endorphin Elite more so than I can with the Vaporfly 3. I'm not even sure if that makes sense. Now look, this comparison review, I'm late in getting this out, so I have seen what a lot of other people are saying, and I've seen some people saying that the Endorphin Elite is just a little too firm for running long distances. That hasn't been my experience. As someone that really enjoys a soft shoe, I really enjoy the Endorphin Elite at long distances. I think it's a nice blend of just the right amount of firmness and pop. Whereas the Vaporfly 3, it does have a nice blend of that softness and pop, but it's very soft. And maybe for that reason alone, I think the Endorphin Elite is going to be a better shoe for more runners than the Vaporfly 3, because I think it's just a little more versatile, being a little firmer. Of course, I've done a lot of workouts. I've done a lot of tempo runs, a lot of intervals in both of these shoes, and I would choose the Endorphin Elite at shorter distances than I would the Vaporfly 3. For longer distances, I don't know. It's a toss-up. I had a great experience in the Endorphin Elite. I haven't run a race in the Vaporfly 3 yet, but honestly, it does feel similar to the Next Percent 2, so if you have run in that, you're going to know what this feels like. It's going to be very familiar. It's going to be like coming home. And then I will just finish this video with a couple of gripes. There are a couple of things I don't like about both of these shoes. Let's start with the Endorphin Elite. Look how close my laces are together. I find this shoe just has a little too much volume. Now, when I say too much volume, it's only because the eyelet chains on the Endorphin Elite, at least for my fairly narrow foot, are very close together. When I cinch it down, it's almost like the eyelet chains are touching. Now, this didn't really affect me on the run. The shoe felt good. I just didn't like the way it looked. Ideally, if I was going to design this for me and me alone, I would take a little bit of the volume out of this shoe. Now, let's compare that to the Nike Vaporfly 3. I felt like the upper was spot on for my foot. Now, Nike does have a reputation for having fairly narrow shoes, but for my foot, it fits very well. I had an appropriate distance between the eyelet chains. When I cinched it down, everything just felt good until I started running. And then my main gripe was with the heel area. I experienced a lot of heel slip in the Vaporfly 3. Now, this is the first shoe that I really had a lot of heel slip where it was actually a problem. So very frustrating, especially when you're buying a shoe that's this expensive. However, that doesn't mean that this shoe gets thrown in the bin just because there is a bit of heel slip. I was able to do the lace lock method, so that little extra eyelet, I was able to utilize that, use the lace lock method, which limited the amount of heel slip and allowed me to actually use the shoes as they were intended. Now, I should say that I did still have heel slip after I used the lace lock method, but I was able to run through it, overcome it without any long-lasting issues, if that makes sense. So guys, I want to hear from you. If you had a choice, or let me start off, do you have either of these shoes? If you do, let me know which one you have in the comments. If you have both, I definitely want to hear from you. And if you had the choice, which one would you choose? The Nike Vaporfly 3 or the Saucony Endorphin Elite? Both solid race day options, but they're made for runners with different preferences. Which do you prefer? My name's Matt B. This has been my review of Nike's Vaporfly 3 and Saucony's Endorphin Elite. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.